Okay, all right. If you're listening to this, Anime Parlay. This is episode 2. We are talking about One Piece, of course. Chapter 1141. There will be spoilers. Just gonna say this on the outset. If you're watching this and you like what we have to say, hit that like button. If you don't like what we have to say, don't do anything at all. And drop a comment if you agree or disagree or just want to talk some crap. My name is Killicam, and I'm here with my illustrious team, minus our boy Mugiwara, but I'll let the rest of the team introduce themselves.
Bash Ketchum here. What it do?
Yo, what up? Peace and blessings, Mr. Wild and Free here.
Okay, all right. Now let's jump into the chapter. All right, so I've reread this a couple times now. I mean, obviously, it's a great chapter. Really great art. Pretty good, plot development. I think reading, the first half of it, I was like, so we're back to the party now? like what's happening? You know what I mean? But the last half of it really kind of comes through. There are some interesting things to note within this, and we'll point it out as we go through the recap. But there are interesting time skips, mini time skips. And what I mean when I say that is we see Gerd and Road, and they're Rodo, and they're in, I guess, the Elbaf infirmary, and it's meant to imply that Luffy and Zoro beat up 2 guards that were waiting. I don't remember this happening. I need to go back and look, but I guess they beat up 2 giants at some point. Not sure why, not sure when. No. Do you guys remember that?
I thought that was the Holy Knights.
No. Yeah, I thought that was the Holy Knights that beat up those guards. Remember when they
Okay, so it's the Holy Knights who beat them up.
Yeah. Yeah, because remember they were still kind of laid out, and they were like, oh, this damage looks recent, and then they saw some of the guards there kind of laid out. So I think as they were leaving, they picked them up for healing.
Got it. Okay,
on
so
the way back,
question. Where did Rodo see, the Shamrock, Shanks look-alike? Because he mentions that, and I'm like, when did you see him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I gotta go back and reread the official release, but I'm like, how do you know who that is? Why are you?
Did he say that at the end of the chapter?
It's like a thought bubble. He mentions that I basically said something along the lines of and then there's that red-haired look-alike, and then basically I hope he doesn't cause any trouble or something like that, because he's talking about Loki getting released. We'll talk about Rodo in a little bit, but just as a general recap, we open on Nami is on her way back. She is, bothered and frustrated by the fact that there was no treasure. So she's at this point left Luffy and Zoro behind to free Loki. They get back to, I guess, the main part of the village that they're in. We see Rodo talk to Gerd, and basically she's interrogating him, saying, hey, what happened to these giants? They seem badly hurt. And Rodo kind of excuses it, and then she says, well, I need to tell Jarl. We then transition into basically the party that we were at previously, where Usopp is very drunk and making kind of jokes and is talking to Jarl. The title of this chapter, by the way, is Older Women, which I feel like is going to be a reference to someone. I don't think it's going to be Big Mom, but I am kind of curious. I think that's very specific that he's into older women. Maybe it's Dr. Correa, because there really isn't too many older women within the series. So I'm very curious, who he's talking about, who that could be specifically, since he is so old. So anywho, they're at the party. Usopp is very drunk, talking almost kind of one-on-one with Jarl, and then jumps up, slaps his sword. Haruden obviously loses it because it's an extremely inappropriate thing to do. He, admonishes Usopp. Brook makes a comment, oh, he's so drunk, while being drunk himself. Transitioning from kind of that little party scene, there was a brief moment where we get an explanation of the way the Atom Tree works and the way the villages on the Atom Tree are situated. If a branch is really old or, is destroyed by specifically lightning and fire, which were very interesting things to point out to Bull, to emphasize. Like I immediately thought of Enel, and then I thought of, I guess, like the person, I guess, marked by flames. So I was just really kind of interested, like, what is Oda really trying to kind of suggest or make us think or hint at? But anywho, so we get that the Adam tree is, obviously sensitive or vulnerable to fire and lightning. Basically, I guess Frankie's done learning about like the truth of the world. He's just like, okay, what's next? And then we get back to like our main characters because he doesn't comment on it again at all. Like, is there anything more to see? Or like, man, I got to grab Robin. Like, just nothing. He's like, okay, like we're going back to the village, right? So we go back to Zoro and Luffy, who are kind of bickering with each other in front of Loki. Zoro is saying, hey, listen, let's not move too fast on this. Luffy's like, no, it's fine. Like, let's go ahead and release him. He jumps on the sea stone cuffs. Immediately established that they are sea stone because he gets weak. And then
Cam, repeat yourself. You kind of faded out.
You cutting off.
Oh, shoot. Okay, is it better?
Yeah, it's better now.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to take it slow. So basically, they're kind of bickering in the sense of how to, go about releasing Loki. Zoro is a little bit more hesitant, also sort of like a little bit more ruthless in the sense of, if he's hungry, like go kill those animals over there. He kicks him in like the chest, I guess, to like ensure that he's like alive and not, basically kind of like playing possum. And then Luffy is kind of interesting. I don't know. He's like a little bit more kind of empathetic, a little bit more sensitive, like, hey, don't kick him like that. Hey, these are my friends, that kind of stuff. It's just kind of classic, like fun, caring Luffy, which was nice to see. As they're about to release him, quote unquote, Harden and the rest of the new giant pirates are falling from, I guess, the upper level of the Atom Tree into the land or the realm of the dead. And they're about to die themselves. Luffy expands, I think, particularly given the size and the scale of that, probably the biggest, I guess, like Gomu Gomu no balloon that we've ever seen. Catches the ship, bounces it back off. They get hurt. I don't know what happens to the ship. And then basically Harden tries to, kind of implore Luffy, don't release him. He's a bad dude. Like, I'm telling you, trust me, da-da-da. Then we get the reveal. It's too late. They've already released him. Loki stands up. Yeah. He is holding some kind of weapon. We haven't seen the weapon. I don't know why we're sitting next to him. That doesn't make any sense, but okay. He stands up. He's holding his weapon, which is titled Ragnir, which is interesting.
Put Ragnir down, yeah.
It looks like he is still cuffed in his legs. Like, it looks like he's able to stand. His arms are free, of course.
Yeah, his left leg.
But his leg...
Yeah, one leg looks cuffed.
Yes.
One looks free, one looks cuffed. And it's a badass artwork there.
Yes, I mean, it looks great, and specifically the scale. So it looks like Loki, who should at least be somewhat weakened by the Sea Stone, but we'll see, because maybe he just can't use the Devil Fruit, but it's still very strong, and just the ability to kind of overpower the, weakness that is imbued by the Sea Stone. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. So that's the recap of the chapter. Thoughts?
Yeah, just off the top from what you were just recently talking about, yeah, I do think that was the biggest Gomu Gomu balloon we've ever seen, because, like, if you think about it, there were, like, 5 giants on a giant ship.
Yes.
And Luffy was able to basically just bounce them all away, right? And when you look at the panel, you can kind of see, like, there's a pretty, like, decent-sized Luffy around, like, the base of where that ship hit. So, like, that's got to be massive. Like, very much to your point, that's probably the biggest one we've ever seen. In regards to the chapter, it was great. I loved it. Sanji's presence was kind of overshadowed a lot just because, like, he was there, but it wasn't, like, really made apparent or anything like that because he's just like, oh, I'll save you, Guard John. But apparently he was on that ship too.
Yeah, and we don't see him again the entire chapter, which is funny. Like you think he'd be like
I mean,
Luffy
he's
or
kind of
something?
like buried in there. Like only after I paid attention to the fact that he said that. Like for some reason, like when I saw that, like where it said I'll save you, Gurchan, I didn't even it didn't even register in my mind that he was actually there on that ship for some reason. Like it just
That's
felt
funny.
like such an aside that maybe it was just like me thinking like that's what he would be saying in the moment, or maybe it was another one of the giants back there. But when I went back and looked, I was like, oh no, that's actually Sanji just kind of sitting there. And there's just a tiny speck of him as a silhouette when Luffy is catching them with the Gumu Gumu balloon. But then you just don't really see, I think there's another small speck of him standing there next to Harden when he's like, oh, I'm glad we made it in time. But I think that it's interesting that now Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji are there. But the presence of Loki is just immense, dude. Like it was in like a very, very serious presence when he stood up. Like just that the scale of him, like seeing like Luffy barely is taller than his toe, where it's like that's like how I know that Luffy can get really big, but goodness, dude, like that seems like a challenge. Like I don't even know if he was that big when he fought Kaido, like maybe.
Yeah, he inflated super huge there. Do we know what happened to Roger's left hand guy?
Yeah, Scopper basically just effed off. I gotta bleep that out. Effed off. Yeah. Like try not to use any curses, bash. But yeah, he
I didn't curse.
No, I'm just saying like preemptively because like I catch myself as well. So yeah, I mean Scopper just kind of exits stage left. We don't know what he's doing. He just left and was like, okay, I'll see you guys later. Like if everything's okay, like we'll talk again soon. So
yeah, I think that's kind of weird. He just like reveals the key and then he leaves it's like the next chapter.
Given that he showed Luffy and Zoro where the key is, I mean, this is obviously kind of like meta narrative. Like Scopper should feel responsibility for making sure that Loki doesn't destroy Elbaf. Like one, your wife is there. Two, your kid is there. Three, like unless he's saying like, which I wish that Oda had written, I'm going to investigate that weird hockey that I sensed. Just say that. You know what I mean? Like I think that'd be interesting. I mean, it kind of like creates like a C story or D story. I don't know how much time we'd spend, but like where Scopper is actively doing something that is advancing the plot that feels relevant to the plot. Maybe he is, maybe Oda just didn't write it, but I do hope that we get answers as to what like Scopper is doing because just I'll see you later, given what is being set up, given he has the power and ability to actually do something about it, is a little weird. So, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But I agree. I mean, the scale of Loki is
huge,
incredible. Yeah. And Oda's weird about scaling, right? Like sometimes like there are a lot of like silhouettes where like when Kaido is first introduced, he looks like a giant. You know what I mean? And like everybody around him.
He kind of is though.
Like, well, I mean, he
has different forms.
He's not that big though. I'm talking about like there's the panel where he's first introduced, where he lands on the island that Kid, Hawkins, Apu, and Killer are on, and that's his first introduction. And like, I'll probably interlay like that if I can. But anyways, like, just take my word for it for a second. Don't look it up because I don't want to miss the recording.
No, no, it's cool. I've already seen it before this time.
Okay, cool. But yeah, I mean, like, it's like a classic panel, and it's like, huge. It's he makes them look like very small and very tiny. So I'm curious. Like, I know we get a stat measurement from Zoro who says like he's almost or as big as Oars. Oars obviously was huge. We all remember that. So I'm very curious if Oda sticks with that scaling or if he just did that to create intimidation and make Loki seem more imposing.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that scaling can be challenging when you're also introducing a matter of perspective in it, right? Like, I mean, perspective is a storytelling tool anyway, right? Especially like visually, where you get an opportunity to present someone as menacing or overpowering or imposing. You can shift that camera angle down to the viewer of the one who is meant to appear smaller, and then kind of put them in this kind of casted light upward, which is what we see for both Kaido in that moment when he landed, as well as what we see here for Loki.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely no comparison in their two sizes, but I understand what you mean, where it's like, okay, in that scene, you get one sense of scale, but then in another scene, they seem a bit smaller. I'm sure that that's going to end up unfolding in some way, but I think that that's purely a matter of perspective. But I do think relative scale, we will see, he still continues to be the size that he is, or is at least as menacing, all the same. One thing that I wanted to bring up as well, like what I thought about, you mentioned Roto, like knowing red-haired Shanks, but what I thought about was like if they were carrying the two guards from the castle that were, alive, there's a chance that they could have been whispering something or have mentioned who they got attacked by, right? Like the red-haired. And so that's probably a chance of how he kind of picked up wind of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I do wish that Oda would write those moments in, because I don't think it would take up too much real estate, but it would just be a little bit more connective. It's funny, man. I was just looking at, because I was doing some, going back through previous chapters and just kind of looking to see like, okay, what happened? What are these moments? They're easy to forget. And it's interesting because when Luffy first meets Loki, obviously Loki is sitting down, he's chained, and they're talking, and it's this interesting kind of Faustian bargain. It's very easy to forget. I completely forgot, but basically what Loki says to Luffy is, hey, free me, right? And if you free me, I'll destroy any pirate crew that you ask, right? That you want me to destroy, right?
Is that what he said?
That's what he says. Luffy doesn't respond. He doesn't say like, yeah, take out, insert pirate crew, right? But it's interesting that Loki mentioned pirate crew. Like Loki knew he was a pirate, offered to take out another pirate crew. You know what I mean? I just find that really interesting. Loki, as far as we know, doesn't have a crew, right? Or even a ship. So, obviously he was a pirate, but like even framing it in that sense, it implies like basically as soon as I get out of this thing, I'm going to get my crew, I'll get my ship, and then we're off to the races. Or, at the very least, I'll get my ship and then we're off to the races. But that's just an interesting kind of like reward to kind of dangle in front of Luffy, right? And I don't think that obviously Luffy needs it or he's going to take it. This is a Yonko we're talking about, but I just thought that was interesting. Yeah. The other thing is when Luffy basically kind of like rejects it, because there's a moment where I think like Loki threatens something, like either threatens Luffy or like threatens something. I forget. I got to go back and read it. But like Luffy immediately goes gear fourth and like is about to punch Loki and like punches basically towards his face, but Loki like dodges like this. And basically there's a slight panel where Loki is immediately alarmed from gear fourth, right? And I just thought that was interesting because obviously Loki is powerful and is implied to be like at least one of the most powerful figures in the world at the moment. But the fact that he was intimidated by gear fourth, I think is interesting. And I'm sure that was just kind of like a throwaway, and like maybe Oda probably for like narrative reasons didn't want to basically show Luffy's gear fifth form. You get what I'm saying? Because if Loki sees his gear fifth form, that has like narrative implications, right? Because now Loki might question if he actually is the sun god, right? So it was just interesting to see him be intimidated by gear fourth Luffy, kind of with the back knowledge that Oda can't really show at this point in time Luffy using gear fifth in front of Loki.
Yeah, and I mean, as we know, at this point, right? Any attack from Luffy should be intimidating, right?
Yes.
Because he is not just a Yonko, but because to the points that you have made in previous talks as well, is like he was throwing hands with Kaido in base form,
Mm.
and really holding his own, right? So even if Luffy threw a regular tiny punch at Loki, right? Like if it was imbued with Conqueror's Haki, there was some amount of threat implied there,
Yeah.
or could have been implied with that attack, which would have caused Loki to potentially dodge, especially since he is chained up in Sea Stone. There is a weakness associated with that as well that just maybe wouldn't have allowed him to just fend it off or just disregard it. You know.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that panel again that Cam was talking about where you said that he was like flustered when Luffy pulled out his Gear 4. I don't remember seeing that, but
hold on, I'll show you.
I see at the end Luffy goes, I could have sworn he was out cold, so he didn't even know.
Wait, did he die?
Talking about
I thought he actually got hit.
No, he dodges it. He moves his head out the way.
Yeah.
He's surprised because Luffy just immediately blitzes him.
Oh, you screenshotted it?
Yeah, I just have it in my photos.
I don't know why.
I'm worried. Who are these dudes in the mask? I have to go back and look. I think they were the people who took care of Loki's beasts in the realm of the dead. But I need to figure out are they human? Are they giants? I got to go back and look and see what their size is. Yes. Anyways, very interesting chapter. I think what we're seeing so far are so many kind of micro feats from Loki in the sense of this dude is still being bound by Sea Stone and has the ability to stand. He's been stabbed in the chest by 3 mythical. That's funny. Mythical Zoan devil fruit blades, right? I guess what we would consider point blank, and is still able to speak, get up, talk, move around. Now, maybe in the next chapter he collapses or something like that, and he's still restrained or whatever. But he just showed an intimidating presence, an intimidating moment by just being able to stand. Who knows? But I think what we're seeing is the accumulation of, if Loki was free and obviously wasn't hurt and injured, but was at full power, unbound by Sea Stone, we still don't know what his devil fruit is. This guy is a real threat. And obviously it took Shanks to take him down. But I'm very, very curious what kind of feats, what does a giant fight look like? Right? We've seen Dory and Bragi, and they're just clashing, and obviously they have a very strong ability with, I forget what it's called, but when they split the giant, I think it's a carp or goldfish or koi fish in the ocean, and it was supposed to be the craziest thing. But Loki,
the Kaku sovereignty, something like that, or one of those kind of
attacks. It's are we gonna, because basically Big Mom and Kaido kind of replicate that move, but are we going to see I don't know, I mean, are we going to see speed from Loki? Are we going to see more strength feats? What does that actually look like? Is from what we can see, I mean, Loki is a specimen even among giants.
Giants,
yeah. The ancient giant blood, right? Or because I'm under the assumption that his horns are real, right? And because sometimes we see giants that have the helmets on that have the replica horns, but I'm genuinely of the assumption that his are real, and you can tell by his size as well. But I think that now that you just kind of brought that up, I was a little perplexed by the whole Big Mom and Kaido thing with that attack until the chapter where we started talking about the different races and how they I guess there's attraction between humans and giants and other things. I'm well, what if the Oni were just, because I don't think we got the explanation on the Oni, which is what Kaido and Yamato are, but they do have smaller horns. So I'm what if that's a combination of ancient giants and humans
Yes.
that we haven't yet touched on, which would make sense as to why Kaido is able to do that kind of attack with Big Mom. And it's
why he's kind
also
of bigger.
Yeah,
Well, that's
and
the
why
thing
he's
too. It's
bigger.
like we know that, like, I mean, I think it's just implied or it's obvious that in order to have a giant be mixed with a human, it requires a human male and a giant female. You know what I mean? Like, that seems to be the combination. So I know there was a video that was kind of floating around with, like, the previous king, King Harold, was Kaido's dad. I don't think that's possible, right? Because who would the mother be, right? Unless it's like another, maybe like a giant Oni or whatever. But obviously Kaido's not that size, so I don't think it's possible. But I agree with you in the sense of, I think that the kind of hybrid that we're seeing, because, even Scopper introduces like all of these races that we know of, maybe except for Fishmen and Minks, of course, are effectively half human hybrids, right? Like Buccaneers, long arms, whatever. So it is reasonable to assume that Onis, as we know them, like that are tall, that have horns, are half human and half maybe ancient giants, right? But, again, I think that would require effectively a human male and a giant female, the same way that, we're looking at Scopper and, his wife.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put Kaido being King Harold's son on there, right? Like, I don't know where that speculation came from.
I think it's just the community,
but just talking.
Yeah, just a theory.
Yeah, but like, because then that would have absolutely put Kaido in the conversation of like being Haruden and Loki's brother and that kind of thing or something. So I think that would be way too much. But yeah,
I don't think you need that kind of connectivity. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, but just somewhere throughout the lineage, I think that there was some kind of acknowledgement of effectively, the possibility of there being an ancient giant that was female and a male. It doesn't have to have any specific or super like deep relevance to the lore, but I do think that is a possible combination for how Kaido came to be. Kaido and the other Oni. But yeah, like in regards to just where things are going with this chapter, I really feel like the way that the chapter ended just invites so much as far as which direction it could go, right? Because just him standing up, how imposing that was, and how like hurt he was before that, right? Like there's so many different things. Could it be that he just has a devil fruit that has a incredible healing factor? Could it be that perhaps it's something along the lines of like shape-shifting or just like, or maybe like illusions, just, or even to the point you were making before, he could just keel over, right? And just like, it was just a temporary moment of him being imposing. There's just so much that can come from this. That's like, it still leaves so much room for exploration, which is why I think that it was executed as well as it was.
I agree. I think the chapter ended off on a real climax, like what's going to happen. I don't think that he keels over, because I think that would be whack, and then there wouldn't be much more for the next few chapters. But I think to bring back the scaling thing, to show that he stands up and how much massively bigger he is than Luffy. But I feel like his sword is something crazy that they're going to reveal next chapter, because
it looked more like
were
hammer.
So
hammer or an axe. I think it's going to be one of those.
It looks to me like a longsword, or we just see the grip of it and the bottom of it, but maybe his weapon can absorb damage or something like that. But they were real shook of him just grabbing it and telling him to drop it, that the weapon could be something that plays a huge factor into the next chapter. And maybe that's what helps Loki destroy worlds, or it's part of his devil fruit somehow. But I'm interested to see what happens with that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, right, is is Luffy right or wrong, right? We've never seen Luffy misjudge a character. I don't think this is going to be the time that he does. So regardless of what Luffy does, and there's just so much narrative like build up and kind of misdirection where Harden gets there and the first thing he's like is like, don't do it. You don't know this guy. He's been mean to me ever since I was a kid. He's like a liar, all this other kind of stuff. It's just setting up like this extreme, almost like biblical reversal, right? Of like
for sure
what behaviors, history, experiences like we've been imparted about Loki and about his character, only to reveal that he's actually been like a decent guy all along, right? And that we've misjudged him and that Luffy was right all along. So it is kind of curious to see like what his actions will be that will either solidify that Luffy was right, that he is, actually like a decent guy and worth, ultimately liberating, or if he is, a bad guy that tricked Luffy or whatever. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Oda's building it too much.
I think that Oda has a really great opportunity to like flexibly explore that, right? And what I mean by that is like, we all know Oda takes great inspiration from real life actors, actresses, and movies and those kinds of things, right? And even when I first saw Loki, the way that horns are depicted very much reminded me of Loki from the Marvel series, from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Sure.
And so if Oda has taken some kind of inspiration from that, right, what we do get to see from Loki throughout the entire arc of the MCU is that vacillation, right? That back and forth between like, oh, this dude is like really bad. He's actually a bad person. He is doing bad things. And there are moments where you absolutely can't trust him. But then also somehow there are redeeming qualities about him. Somehow there are
he
aspects
saves his
where
brother.
it's like, So I think that Oda has a really great opportunity to explore that kind of flexibility within the nature of Loki, because I think that even to the point of whether he falls down or not on the next chapter, even that could be a facade, right? Even that could be misdirection, and maybe he's intentionally leading them astray or whatever it is, right? So it's like he's really set it up to where he's casted so much doubt on Loki that it would be hard to really find any conviction behind any of his actions as we move forward with these next couple of chapters, right? Like, I feel like everyone will find a way to doubt what he does next, right? Where it's just like, yeah, well, this happened, but I don't think that's the actual, there's something bigger behind it, right? And so I think that with that level of flexibility, Oda could really explore something intriguing here. And I also think that, if he were to be that real, genuine enemy threat to Luffy, right? That's the greatest opportunity that Luffy has to really bring him to heel, to really be like, okay, no, shut it down. And then maybe have some reflection and some opportunity to have the redeeming quality start to appear.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm beginning to think that Elbaf is going to be a relatively long arc, maybe even longer than Egghead. It just has so many seeds are being planted, right? And Egghead was like surprisingly longer, I think, than everybody thought, because it just kind of kept going on and on. I mean, obviously escalating and was still really interesting to watch, but I do feel like, I don't know. I mean, I guess just one last thing on this, because I do want to transfer into the subtopic, but I think it would be very difficult to double down in this moment, like in a serious way, right? Like he like hurts Haruden or something like that. Like just maliciously, viciously, like without, restraint or any kind of dual purpose. Like it would be hard to redeem him, I think, after that, like realistically, right? I mean, and yeah, maybe he's like an anti-hero or something like that, but I don't know. I do see this as like Shanks was the person who took him down, Luffy will be the person who will ultimately redeem and liberate him. I don't think that Luffy's goal is ultimately to re-imprison him as like meeting the watermark that Shanks left behind. And I think in order for us, even as readers, to feel like Loki has been redeemed is that, and this is like a classic Oda thing, right? Where like we realize that the villain we've been looking at all along, Doflamingo, the perfect example, had his own justifications and motivations behind his actions, right?
For sure.
And obviously, I think we'll clearly get a flashback with Loki. The question is, what does he do that either can be kind of like, ambiguous, right? Like maybe he like rushes through the group, knocks everybody out, right? Or like knocks Haruden out or something like that. And he did that because, he wanted to like, incapacitate him in like the most nonviolent way, like not kill him, not hurt him in a serious way. Like that's like a classic kind of anime thing. So I don't know. I mean, it definitely is going to be interesting. I'm glad that we don't have a break next week so that we can see
is on a run.
Yes. So, and obviously Oda's going to leave us with like a crazy cliffhanger. Hopefully it's only a 1 week break after that, not 2, but we're in a good place right now. Just pure action wise. And then we'll get into the plot stuff later as the crew kind of reunites and shares the information they've learned. Usopp. Let's talk about Usopp.
Yeah.
So if you're reading the title of this video, we've got some things to say about Usopp. Not really negative things towards Usopp because, I don't really have any beef with Usopp. He's not my favorite character, but, he has been the human stand-in for Oda. Not, a stand-in for Oda, but Oda believes that he is the closest thing to like a regular human in this world. And he has been effectively set for greater things since his inception. He is a coward. He wants to be strong. He wants to be admirable. He wants to be like his dad, right? And throughout this journey, to be frank, we have seen him do superhuman things. We have seen him take punishment that should have killed somebody else, and people have commented on that. We have seen him do incredible feats like of, being a sniper, like through being kind of like a trickster. Yeah, like being like a trickster, like being smart, really high battle IQ, despite his weaknesses, being able to fashion equipment and weapons and self-defense tools and all these kinds of things out of this technology that, is just new to him, that he just finds. And he, created the original climate attack for Nami. This is an exceptional person, right? Like, yeah. But he doesn't get the shine. And he doesn't get the shine because Oda doesn't specifically call out these incredible feats, doesn't call out his high IQ, doesn't call out his superhuman kind of potential, particularly in relation to maybe it's endurance, maybe it's just, like taking punishment. And more specifically, post-time skip, Usopp, barring and excluding his use of advanced kind of observation hockey, and maybe it's not advanced because maybe that's future sight, but let's just call it observation hockey, but like a highly skilled version of it, right? Maybe even an advanced application, but just not future sight. He has done nothing. He has not been in any one-on-one fights. Nami did the work in Wano when they took out Ulti and Page 1. Usopp was effectively just along for the ride, like shooting little random stars or whatever. A little bit. Yeah, but like not in like any kind of meaningful way. Again, Nami was the person who delivered the real coup de grace. Usopp basically just kind of like helped support and like create distance with his pop grenades.
Yeah. To be fair, that was only after Ulti was already pretty badly hurt that Nami got that finishing hit.
Sure. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of this weird thing, like where if you track the post-time skip, we go from Fishman Island. I don't even remember Usopp's one-on-one fight if he had one. I'll have to go back and look and see if it's there. Even though I feel like If there was one, it should be versus Van Auger. No, sorry, not Van Auger. The guy who like throws things. I forget his name. He like throws things.
Wait to watch the live action.
Yeah, just gotta rewatch.
Oh my gosh! All right, don't get me started on live action. But like,
no, I'm just kidding.
Usopp in Fishman Island. I mean, I have to go back and look, but I don't remember him having a fight. But if he did, it was Fishman Island. It's minor. Dressrosa, he has like his exhibition of advanced, observation hockey. To be honest, after he like pitifully flees and leaves Robin behind, which was such a crushing blow to anybody who is a fan of Usopp. It was like, dude, I thought we got over this, but whatever. He came back, he redeemed himself. Then we have Zoe, which he's not in. Then we have, well, not really. Then we have Whole Cake Island. Unfortunately, I think, no, it wasn't Usopp who revealed the secret. It was Kinemon. Then we have Whole Cake Island, which he's not in. Then we have Wano, which again, we've already talked about. Very, very, very minor kind of, tag team, sort of more support role fight, right? And then Egghead, nothing. And now we're in Elbaf. This is supposed to be Usopp's arc. This is supposed to be the arc in which Usopp effectively achieves his dream of being a strong and respected and admired warrior of the sea. Who would be the people that are just objectively in a position to validate who is strong and who is worthy of respect as a warrior? Elbaf Pirates, right? Specifically, in this case, either the old heads, right, who obviously were part of the fighting culture, or the new giant pirates, right? Probably the old heads, possibly even Jarl, right? So, I don't know. I mean, seeing in the chapter, and obviously it's still very early to say, but seeing in the chapter that like Usopp's still kind of joking around, like he's slapping like Jarl's like sword in his head, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem to be paired with anybody in any interesting or meaningful way that will get him closer to the dream that he has. I do still think there is a chance, and I think it's getting like lower and lower, but there is a chance that we might see Usopp have a 1v1 with Loki, like Trickster God Usopp versus Trickster God Loki, which I think would be amazing, even if it's brief. You know what I mean? Even if it's brief, I think that would be incredible, right? If he even holds his own.
Like how Brooke went up against Big Mom for a little bit, like very tight spat, small spat.
Exactly. Like if for whatever reason Loki's got a crazy ability and knocks everybody out or something like that, or Loki speed blitzes past everybody and like gets to an area where like only Usopp is there, and Usopp like for whatever reason is able to like defend or hold him off or keep him there or whatever Oda wants to write, but like does something meaningful in this arc that is recognizable by all of his peers, because we know that, like, again, if there's going to be a moment where Usopp has a feat, it's going to be here.
It's got to be here.
It's going to be in this arc.
Has to be here, yeah.
If he does,
supposed to be the leader of the Giants
and this is an original crew member, by the way. This is like Usopp is one of the 5. Usopp was the 3rd, 4th to join, because obviously Nami leaves for a time, but like, it's Luffy, Zoro, Nami, then Usopp, right? And Usopp is like considered to be like the best friend of Luffy. They're supposed to be as thick as thieves. I don't think you see that that much anymore, because there's in the post time skip a little bit less interaction between the crew that's in canon. But Usopp is a major character. It is imperative for him, for Sanji, for Nami, for Zoro, and obviously Luffy to achieve their dreams. So I'm very curious, like, if Oda does not deliver the goods for Usopp, I think that will signal Usopp is no longer relevant as a core Straw Hat member. He's obviously still a Straw Hat member, still an important character, a legacy character, but narratively, no longer that much of like a dominant focus or interest in Oda's mind.
I agree with that if he doesn't get his power up this arc, but all signs lead to that happening. So how it happens will be interesting to see when it happens. But Cam's right. If nothing happens this arc, I mean, Usopp's basically cooked.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's not going to happen anywhere else. I mean, maybe we'll get like an interesting fight with him and Van Augur later when the crew fights the Blackbeard pirates. But I think at that point it'll be like that's kind of what is expected because they're supposed to be the foil of our Straw Hats. So like, sure,
right.
But this is the moment where like, dude, you gotta. This is it. It's make or break. So
yeah. He should get his power up this arc so that he can have an even 1v1 versus Van Augur.
For sure.
Yes.
That guy's OP based off what we've seen from him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Straight up. It's a great devil fruit. I mean, yeah. So, Wilder Fruit, what were you going to
say? Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, I think that the parallels are absolutely there, right? Not just the parallels, but the direct calls that we have heard from Usopp over time to get to this point. I do think that his ingenuity has been severely underutilized, and the fact that they're in Elbaf and there's like various materials there that you can't find anywhere else. I think that this would be an excellent opportunity for him to explore that. An interesting like collaboration that I don't think we've really seen that I would love to see is some kind of invention between Usopp and Frankie that's like not ship related. Would be really fascinating. So the potential of them creating some kind of weapon collaboratively would be really interesting here, especially since we see Frankie getting a little bit more of that spotlight here in Elbaf than we've gotten with Usopp thus far, right? I think that Frankie finding that mural really kind of put a big precedent, or at least a big piece of the like main character story development in Elbaf on Frankie more than what we've gotten from Usopp up until this point, right? Like, unless this little joke that we saw has more implications than we realize, Usopp just really hasn't, outside of just, wow, like, I can't believe I'm actually here. Like, we haven't really gotten anything from Usopp in Elbaf up until this point that really indicates that something major is going to happen for him here, right? So it just does feel like okay, congratulations, Usopp, you made it to where where you said you would make it to. But that doesn't feel like enough of a resolve. We absolutely need to see something with Usopp here. And, the fact that he's a trickster, the fact that Loki is known to be a trickster, like there's just way too many parallels there that, maybe there's something that he can learn from Loki, right, as a trickster, right? And, maybe to that end as well is like both of them being tricksters. That's the one flaw in my concept or my guess that Loki potentially becomes a Straw Hat, right? Like, I don't necessarily think there need to be two tricksters, right? I know that their roles would be served differently, but that's definitely one of those things that kind of pushes back against that original concept or idea for me. But yeah, I think that Usopp has not really been the crowd favorite, and I know it's tough for people to like really reconcile this, but I think that it's happened on multiple occasions across many different animes where it's like you start with a certain set of characters and they seem like they're going to be more important than they are, but then the director or the writer has to really hone in on who actually is important and who is not to the inevitable end of the story. And sometimes people's favorite characters get cut short. And I think that this is that make or break arc for Usopp.
You know what it is?
We will really see it.
I agree.
This is what it is. Usopp doesn't have a role. And what I mean when I say that is like Zoro doesn't have like a role in the crew. He's obviously the first mate. Zoro is a swordsman. Well, let me get it out.
Okay, yeah.
Zoro is a swordsman. We see him be a swordsman all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Usopp used to be the ship mechanic, right?
Shipwright.
Would like repair the ship, make inventions, aim the cannons, all this kind of stuff, right? And he's obviously the sniper. We don't see him snipe. right? So that core function is not fulfilled, right?
We don't see him snipe.
He is, or like was the ship mechanic, and then we got Frankie. That job's gone, right? We then, like, he, like I said, was like the ship mechanic, was like,
inventor,
making inventions and all this other kind of stuff. Like, we don't see him do any of those things. So Usopp just exists because we don't see him snipe. He's just there. And that
this is just few and far
between. They call him the Sniper King.
Yeah,
Toge King.
That is the problem, though, right? It's like the one function that he has, we never see him do, at least post time skip, minus Dressrosa, right? So I think that, unfortunately for Usopp, the way that Oda has introduced characters, Frankie kind of supplanting him, right? As far as like, Frankie should also be an inventor. Frankie is an inventor. Frankie is the shipwright. He invented the ship. He like constantly creates new robots or new things that, alterations to his own body, right? Like there's
even Carrot.
Yes, there's like a little too much overlap with Frankie. I mean, Frankie, to be honest, is kind of like the advanced form of Usopp, right? And Usopp, it's interesting because like in this arc, at least so far as we've seen him, he's basically just kind of messing around. He's just, drinking, getting drunk. And to some degree, it's like, it's fine. Like, you're excited to see Dory. You're excited to see Broggy. You're in this place that you've dreamed of. Cool. Right. But at the same time, like, if you've noticed, Usopp should be like, one, sober. He should be the sober king. But two, like, he should be the person who's like asking all the questions, trying to get the lore, trying to explore.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, why is Frankie the person learning about the world history? Shouldn't that be Usopp? Right? Like, I understand that they're trying to kind of tie it to like Frankie is like learning about the source of the Atom Tree because obviously he made the Going Sunny, which I get. I understand that pull. I'm not necessarily taking that away from Frankie, but I do think that if there was somebody who should be like adamantly learning about the Giants, adamantly learning about their history, like trying to explore, this is, again, Usopp, who has been dreaming of this land since he was a kid. I mean, obviously, to some degree, he still is a kid, but, like, you get my point. So, Usopp is...
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, Usopp is, like, the latchkey kid of One Piece. He has lost his place within the narrative. And unless unless Oda really shows out for him, and I'll be honest, I'm not super confident because we all said the same thing for Frankie in Egghead. That was supposed to be like Frankie's, he's getting all the deep research, like all the blueprints, all this kind of stuff. He's meeting his, like the person who he kind of pseudo trained under, right? And like basically where he was at the last island, I guess, that Vegapunk was at, and like, was learning his inventions and all that stuff. Like Frankie should have been in awe. Like, if Vegapunk actually died, he should have had a relationship with Frankie, maybe transferred over some of those blueprints. I mean, obviously, we're now in a place where, like, maybe Vegapunk comes back, even though we haven't seen him. I think it's kind of like a weird kind of, like, hanging chat from the last arc, but fine. Maybe we do still get that moment. Maybe, one of the satellites or whatever transfers that information to Frankie in some way. Who knows? But, yes.
Yeah, you should have got those pacifista upgrades, bro.
Yeah, or at least the blueprints. Like,
I mean,
kind of like
give
us the prelude of a power up, right? Like, some kind of crazy, like, science, technology, whatever that we've seen. And there was a bunch of them that we saw in Egghead. But now I'm passing that off to you, or like maybe we see Frankie working on how to recreate it or whatever, right?
Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, so basically, I don't know. I mean, like, just to kind of wrap it up, it's like Usopp needs a place. He needs a purpose. And so far, within post-time skip, we haven't seen him demonstrate much of any of that. And this, again, is the make-or-break moment.
Yeah, no, that I can agree with. And, I was thinking about it. I think that Oda has been deliberately foregoing certain things narratively for the sake of the broader purpose and vision that he has for how One Piece plays out. And what I mean by that is it's rare and infrequent that he shows power-ups, right? And, shows the specific implications of how, a power is achieved outside of the monster trio, right? Like, I mean, even with them, it's pretty rare.
Yeah, they disappear.
Exactly, right? So it's within the thread of the moment that we often get the breakdown, or we get to see the power that they have manifested, or they manifest within the moment, or maybe a quick flashback to how they attained that power, right? Or nothing at all, right? Like case in point, like how we saw Robin with that whole devil. We had no clue how she managed to come up with that power, right? Like we didn't see the well, of course it was a small flashback of like, oh, if I'll be the if I have to be a devil in order to protect my friends, then I'll become that. And then she literally becomes that, right? But outside of those core moments within the moment of conflict, it's very rare, if ever, that Oda just directly contributes time and chapters to power level scaling and production, right? And I think that really speaks to Oda's core directive and focus with One Piece, which is on the world building and everything around the Straw Hats. And so to that end, I don't fault him for not giving us that with Frankie at Egghead. I don't fault him for that, for not necessarily giving us that with Chopper in Wano with the whole doctor thing. Like we kind of see it, but we kind of don't, right?
We got it with the raid suit.
But that's Sanji though, and that was in the heat of that initially kind of came up as a lagging from Whole Cake, right?
We saw the thing, right, that his family has the ability to unlock greater power through these suits.
Genetic potential, yeah.
They then give him his, right, that they, I guess, have always had, but just, he can never use it or whatever, right? They give it to him, and then we get him using it in Wano, and then we get the kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of butterfly moment of him coming out of like the chrysalis and emerging as a stronger individual as a result of it. So basically, I'm just saying like that was a long run of like plant the seed of like power up. You see like a glimpse of it, and then it like is fully like realized later.
For sure. And so yes,
he's in the trio.
Also, exactly, he's in the monster trio, right? He is the shield of the sun god, right, of the Pirate King. And so there's that. And also, I do think that it was important for Sanji to have some kind of resolve for his power, in regards to his story, right? Like knowing that he was a child of science and all of these things, and seeing that all of his siblings had these powers, it only made sense, like story-wise, to give him that. But to your point about how it played out across an arc, we can get to Nami in a second, but like how it played out across an arc, to that end, potentially that's where we might still get our resolve for Frankie, right? With Vegapunk being there, with the new original Stella body being recreated somehow, right? Like we may very well get that moment where Frankie and Vegapunk are finally able to just kind of powwow, chop it up, talk about inventions, and really give him that opportunity to level up. Even if we don't see it in full, we might get that moment where we get that interaction between Frankie and Vegapunk to be like, hey, so what you working on? You know what I'm saying? And then that could absolutely lead into some other implications for Frankie and his power, or how critical of a role he might play later. And to the point that you were making about Usopp not having any importance, I really agree with you, because, here we're with Frankie, and especially with the old schematics that he picked up on and these kind of things, Frankie has long had more of an implication on the story than Usopp has for quite some time now. Ever since, that Lost Island and the time skip and all of that, when, he kind of caught wind of like the Pluton, or, the ancient weapon schematics and like that kind of stuff, right? Like that has heavy implications on the story and the world building, more so than anything that Usopp has given us, right? Like even in his wild dreams and all of the things that we've seen, there's never been anything so integrated into the fabric of the lore that we've seen come from Usopp. But what were you saying about Nami?
Yeah, I guess I was just saying, like, in the case of Nami, she gets her power up in Whole Cake Island with the. I mean, we're shown Zeus, right, and that in the escape, Nami has the ability to. Actually, no, sorry, it wasn't even in the escape. We don't really get Nami taming Zeus until Wano. Where she was around Big Mom and was able to kind of feed him as he's effectively trying to kill them. Feed him the little thunderballs or whatever, right? I don't know. I mean, I guess that is an example of a power up in the moment, done well narratively, that makes sense. I mean, to some degree, I mean, obviously you can argue why is a homie of Big Mom still following Nami? That doesn't make any sense. Their entire purpose is to serve Big Mom, but whatever. But yeah, we can kind of just accept it because it's cool and it unlocks a lot of abilities for Nami and it feels right for her, right? But that being said,
I like it, and it introduces a level of autonomy.
Sure, yeah.
I think that plays into Nami's weather manipulation, though, how a cloud would go from the person who gave it a soul to just switch to Nami like that. I feel like it just shows Nami's weather manipulation power.
Yeah. They have
kind of strong.
A little bit of self-interest where it's I follow Big Mom because, not because I'm compelled to, but because she grants me the most benefit, right? Whereas in this moment, maybe Nami is giving me more of a benefit, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of those things where there are a handful of characters, Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, and Nami gets to kind of play around a little bit just because, one, the voice actor for Nami is Oda's wife, but two, I think she's just easy to kind of throw in the mix because she's funny and she's got a well-established character that can kind of bond and work well with any kind of combination, whether it's her and Luffy or her and Sanji or her and Zoro or any other kind of combination. She's just easy to slot in, right? Maybe easier than say a Robin or somebody like that. With that being said, I do feel like Sanji and Zoro have gotten elevated status because they are the right and left wing of the Pirate King, right? Obviously, it's the Luffy show. Nami gets her love. The rest of the crew are kind of support, how to describe this? Role players, right? Chopper's obviously the doctor. Frankie is a shipwright. Jinbei, who doesn't have as much to do, but is still an important figure, still, I would say, arguably loved by the fan base and, gets his moments, whatever. Usopp's just, despite being of the original five, just really doesn't get that kind of attention, that TLC, if you will. I don't know. It'd be interesting. Like I said, hopefully Usopp gets his moment. I will say this one last thing. Which is that it is so interesting to have watched, and I always say this, but pre-time skip to me is better One Piece. I still love post-time skip, but pre-time skip, the interplay between the characters, feeling like you knew them, the jokes, the banter, the back and forth, it's just all so fun. And the reason why I bring it up is because I think when we lost all the crew after Shabba Archipelago, we got the Luffy show. We got a post crew impel down into Marineford, just pure Luffy action. And it was great. It was fantastic. It felt weird at first because it was damn, the rest of the crew's not even here. We haven't experienced the story without them for so long. But it was fun. It was pure action and it was extremely driven, of course, and focused just on Luffy and, his trials and tribulations, the fights, the ups and downs, all this other kind of stuff. And it was great. Particularly when you start bringing in old and new faces as support around Luffy, it really just galvanizes that Luffy is just that guy. He has the ability to bring people and inspire allies around him. And to be honest, Mihawk even acknowledges that is his greatest strength, that he is able to win people over to his side.
Yeah.
Oda learned something within that time, though, which is that the focus of the series is no longer on Luffy and his crew being effectively a makeshift family for the purpose of effectively achieving their own individual dreams in collaboration with helping Luffy become the Pirate King because they believe in him, because they're inspired by him. It has kind of shifted to this is the Luffy show. And all of these characters, whether they achieve their dreams or not, are largely here to service Luffy in that goal. And I understand from like a narrative standpoint, it makes it more focused because we are now in the end game of the series. Luffy does need to become the Pirate King by the end of it. Like that's what we've all been like working towards. But I do feel like what has been sacrificed is the individual agency, motivations, dreams, if you will, of the rest of the crew. When is the last time you heard Sanji talk about All Blue? Zoro gets a shine because obviously like his active fighting and supporting Luffy is getting him closer to being recognized as the world's best swordsman. When have you seen Nami draw a map? I mean, you get Nico Robin like, you know, learning about the Void Century and reading the Poneglyphs or whatever. You know, we'll put that aside. Obviously, that's a very specific skill. But I don't know, the rest of the crew, in terms of like achieving their dreams, it just seems so fuzzy because it's so rarely mentioned. And it makes me sad a little bit to think about because that was such an important and integral aspect of their characters pre-time skip. And it made you feel connected.
I think those are important, but I think what's also grown in importance as they've gone on these great adventures together is part of their dream is Luffy fulfilling his dream. So maybe that took, you know, their dreams have taken a back burner at the moment until that gets accomplished. And then maybe they can work on those dreams afterwards, or maybe it'll make it easier once Luffy's the Pirate King.
Right. I can see it that way, or it's more so of like by proxy of Luffy achieving his dreams, they'll be able to achieve theirs, right? Like with Nami being able to be the cartographer of the entire world or whatever it is, right? Like by staying by the Pirate King's side, like she's absolutely making huge advancements on that she would have never achieved on her own, right? And so her dream then becomes a direct derivative to Luffy's dream. And I think that the same can be said for the others, but very much agree with your point in regards to, you know, they have to take a back burner for the broader story that's developing here. And there's so much world building and so much lore inside of One Piece that, you know, I think that it's fair for Oda to start reining it in or like focusing in on some of the deeper plot elements that he wants to expose. This is the kind of reason why, you know, certain shows and many fan bases ask for like spin-off series and that kind of thing for like to get a resolve on certain characters. So it's not unheard of for this kind of thing to happen. It just is a little sad, right? To know that it's happening with the characters that we've grown and loved for many, many years now. Especially in a series like One Piece where people think like, oh, wow, there's 1,000+ chapters. Surely you have time to explore all of the characters and their dreams and to flesh them out as if they were individual protagonists in their own right or the main protagonist in their own right. But the reality of the situation is that the story is just so expansive and the world building is so expansive and the lore behind everything is just so deep that even with 1,000+ chapters, like we can probably go to 2,000 chapters and still not have enough time to really flesh out Nami's dreams and Usopp's dreams and, you know, all of that.
Yeah.
And it's got to end at some point.
Yeah, I mean, those are good points. I guess I'll put it like this. When you guys think of the end of the series, I mean, maybe there's the camp of people who think series ends, Luffy achieves his dream and then dies shortly after, right? I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's extremely dark and depressing and like for a feel-good, you know, kind of all-encompassing ages adventure story, right? But here's the thing, right? Roger, after he became the pirate crew, what did he do? Right? Obviously, he became sick and then eventually, you know, accepted his death and then chose to inspire the world through his death, right? He became a martyr.
Right.
Luffy And I guess the reason I bring that up is because, like, after he achieved becoming the Pirate King, he was just hanging out. Him and the crew were just sailing around, having adventures, like exploring the world and effectively having fun with it because they're extremely powerful. Nothing really threatens them. They're just having fun, right? You could make the same argument of Shanks before he was like, okay, it's time to move. He was just sailing around the world, having adventures, right? So the idea of Luffy at the end of the series with his crew continuing to sail around the world and spend time with each other and like have adventures because they choose to, not because they're trying to accomplish some goal of just making Luffy the Pirate King and then they're going to go their separate ways, but because they see each other as a family, because they see each other as irreplaceable. I don't know. I mean, like key Nakama friends, whatever you want to call it, like in their lives, right? That after this adventure is done, and eventually they will, you know, go their separate ways or, you know, achieve their dreams, whatever. But I do like to think that like the crew themselves, yes, they want Luffy to become the Pirate King, but more than anything, they just are a group of people who have come together because this is where they belong. You get what I'm saying? Like the reason why Chopper went out to the sea specifically with Luffy and the rest of the crew is because not because, you know, he was inspired by Hero Luke to go out and become a pirate and explore the sea and be free and all this other kind of stuff, but because he believed in Luffy and loved the crew and they loved him and they accepted him and didn't see him as a monster. And that's who he wants to be with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I hope that we do get more of that. I don't know if we will, but I do want to see in the post time skip more focus on them. Just, I mean, obviously they're working towards their individual goals. They're working towards the group goals of making Luffy the Pirate King, but like that they just enjoy spending time with each other without there being any kind of purpose behind it. And we'll see if we get that.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
We shall see.
Yeah. Anyways, we should wrap this one up. Yeah. Appreciate you guys' time. This has been a great combo.
Yes, sir. For sure.
Absolutely.
For anybody listening, of course, thank you for obviously getting to the end of this. This has been an interesting discussion. Hopefully, you have your own thoughts and opinions. Share them down in the comment section. What do you think we got right? You know, we're within this. We're trying to talk about things that a lot of people aren't talking about, specifically from like kind of a literary analysis perspective, right? Obviously, talking about speculation, but really kind of talking about like how the series so far has progressed, character kind of relationships, and how it makes us feel, for lack of better words. Mm-hmm. This is Anime Parley. I am Killa Cam.
Wild and free here. Peace and blessings.
Bash Ketchum.
And appreciate you guys for listening. Again, do the whole things like don't dislike, comment, subscribe, all those things. And we'll
let us know what you think.
Yeah, let us know what you think. You know, let us know if we got something wrong or if you disagree, if you have your own kind of insight. And appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Peace, y'all.
All right. Bye.